Okay, I'm continuing. So, as I said in the first video, the internal oblique will begin in front of the inguinal canal, then they will pass over the inguinal canal, then go at the back of the inguinal canal. The transversus abdominis will also join those here. Okay, so they will form something called arched fibers. Arched fibers. Because they are together, so they will form an arched fibers of the internal oblique and the transversus abdominis muscles, and they will both go at the back of the inguinal canal. Now, the next layer will be the transversalis fascia. Transversalis fascia. Okay, when we're doing the transverse section of the abdominal wall, we mentioned the transversalis fascia. This is the layer before the peritoneum. Okay, so transversalis fascia will cover the back, the posterior region of the inguinal canal. Okay, so transversalis fascia will cover the posterior. Okay, so what we can see here with the posterior region is only the internal oblique and the transversus abdominis muscles that pass posterior to this side of the inguinal canal. They are the only portions at the back. Okay, so the rest of the back, or the rest of the posterior area, will be covered by the transversalis fascia. The transversalis fascia. Now, how is the ring formed? How is the ring formed? Okay, so the ring or the canal is formed mainly by the external oblique aponeurosis. So if this is the external oblique aponeurosis, it comes in this direction. When it gets to the inferior region, it turns like this. It turns like this. You see, a ring has been formed. Okay, so it reflects and turns like this to form the ring. Okay, so this superficial ring that we are seeing is mainly formed by the aponeurosis of the external oblique. So external oblique will inflect like this to form the ring. Okay, it will inflect like this to form the ring. Is that okay? Good. So now we can talk about the boundaries. Okay, so anteriorly, let's first talk about the inferiorly. So the floor will be formed by the inguinal ligament, and the lacunar ligament. Okay, now anteriorly, we said anteriorly is formed by what? External oblique aponeurosis. Okay, so anteriorly it will be formed by external oblique aponeurosis. So anteriorly, external oblique aponeurosis. The same anteriorly, we said the internal oblique muscles, they will begin anterior to the canal. Okay, before they will go over it, and they will go at the back. Okay, so anteriorly too, we have 1/3 of it being covered by internal oblique muscles. Okay, now superiorly, or the roof. Superiorly or roof. So the roof will be made up of, now look at the roof. Okay, you can see the arch fibers of what? Internal oblique and transversus abdominis. So arched fibers of internal oblique and internal oblique and transversus abdominis. Okay, so and also before, where the internal oblique was in front, okay, that superior part was covered by transversalis fascia. Transversalis fascia. Okay. Now, posteriorly at the back, as I said, is mainly by the transversalis fascia, because the transversalis fascia is the deep layer. Posterior to transversalis fascia, and also you see these arched fibers. I said when they got here, they moved at the back. Okay, so these ones, and when the internal oblique and the transversus abdominis muscles move at the back and merge together, they form something we call conjoint tendon. Conjoint tendon. So this conjoint tendon is a mixture, or is when the internal oblique muscle and the transversus abdominis muscle come together, join together, and fix at the back of the pubic tubercle. Okay, they are there to strengthen the or buttress the superficial ring. Okay, so that whatever comes through it will be stable. Okay, so these are the borders or the boundaries of the inguinal canal. Okay, now which structures pass through the inguinal canal? Okay, in males we have the cord, okay, spermatic cord passing through the inguinal canal. Okay, in females we have the round ligament passing through the inguinal canal. Okay, so in males we have the spermatic cord passing through the inguinal canal. Spermatic cord, in the sense that in utero the testis develops in the abdomen. Okay, the testis develops in the abdomen. Okay, but with time, as the baby is born, the testis has to descend down into the scrotum. Okay, the testis has to descend down into the scrotum. So let's say this is the scrotum. So this testis has to come down into the scrotum. Okay, now it is this inguinal canal which serves as a passageway for the testis to descend into the scrotum. So this testis, when it's ready, led by the gubernaculum. So the gubernaculum will lead the testis, assist it to pass through the inguinal canal, then it enters the scrotum. Okay, the other testis here will also pass through the inguinal canal and enter the scrotum. Okay, now and the testis comes with the spermatic cord. Okay, because even though the testis is inside the scrotum, it still has to communicate with structures in there. Okay, so this spermatic cord contains certain structures which helps the testis to communicate with other structures inside the pelvis. Okay, when sperms are produced and you want to ejaculate, the sperms have to pass through the vas deferens, okay, and enter into the pelvis, so that the prostate gland will produce fluids to nourish the sperms before ejaculation happens. Okay, the prostate gland is inside, so this testis, which is outside, has to find a way for the sperms to get inside so that they'll be nourished before ejaculation occurs. Okay, so this spermatic cord we are talking about contains the vas deferens, okay, which helps with the transfer of sperms. Okay, and also it contains other structures like the pampiniform venous plexus. Okay, they are veins that carry blood away from. So they also have cremasteric muscles and other stuff. Okay, cremasteric artery and all those things. So we talk about them later. Okay, but for now, appreciate that the spermatic cord is there to enable the testes communicate with other structures inside the pelvic area. Now with females, females do not have pelvic spermatic cords. Okay, because with females the ovary will remain in the abdominal region. So with females, you don't have the ovary coming out. Okay, but there's a structure which will come out, which we call the round ligament. The round ligament. And please don't confuse yourself with the round ligament we saw with the liver. Okay, there's another round ligament in the liver. Okay, but this one we are talking about the round ligament of the uterus. The uterus also has a round ligament. Okay, so this round ligament is a ligament that supports the uterus actually. Okay, so it will support the uterus, then it will come down, pass through the inguinal canal, and enter into the labia majora. The labia majora of the genitals. Labia majora. Okay. The labia majora is the fatty portion of the vulva. Okay, so when you take the female external genitalia, we have a fatty portion where hair can even grow. Okay, it contains hair. Okay, that's the labia majora. Okay, so the round ligament from the uterus will pass through the inguinal canal and attach and insert itself in the labia majora. Okay, so in males, spermatic cord passes through it. Females, round ligament passes through it. Also, other nerves can pass through the inguinal canal. So we have the ilioinguinal nerves. Ilioinguinal nerves passing through. We also have this nerve, genitofemoral nerve. Genitofemoral nerve also passing through this inguinal canal. Okay, so this is the boundary of the inguinal canal and the structure that passes through the inguinal canal. Now let's talk about hernia. Hernia. Let's talk about hernia very briefly. Okay, so this is the scrotum. Good. So with hernia, you see the testis has to pass through the inguinal canal and insert in the scrotum, right? Now in some people, the inguinal ring, this deep inguinal ring or the internal inguinal ring might be still open. Okay, might be like more patent. Okay, and if that happens, intestines, ileum, okay, intestines are over here. Okay, the small intestine, they can enter, okay, into the inguinal ring, the deep inguinal ring, then come down and also insert into the scrotum. When this happens, we say we have what? Hernia, or there's been an herniated disc. Okay, so that's what we mean by what? Hernia. And it is when the abdominal content, like the intestine, gets its way through the inguinal canal and inserts into the scrotum. And when this happens, we call this indirect hernia. Indirect hernia. So indirect hernia is when the intestine, they follow the path of the inguinal canal, the path the testes took to enter the scrotum, they follow the same path. Okay, because the testes pass through the superficial deep ring, superficial ring, then it enters the scrotum. So if the intestine follow the same path, we call it indirect hernia. In some people, the intestine will not pass through the deep ring. Okay, the wall of the inguinal canal may be weak. Okay, if that happens, the intestine can push themselves through the wall. Okay, then they will form a mass over here. Okay, when that happens, we call it direct hernia. Direct hernia. That means they push themselves directly into the ring, okay. But the indirect, they pass through the deep ring before the superficial. Direct, directly, they just move. They don't pass through the deep ring. They just directly outpouch themselves into the inguinal canal and they form. So normally the direct ones don't enter the scrotum. They normally form an outpouch over here. So you see at the inguinal region maybe a pouch over there containing intestine. But with the indirect, because they pass through the same way the testes pass, so they are going to end up where the testis is, which is the scrotum. Okay. Now, one way to differentiate between direct and indirect hernia in clinical settings is the use of inferior epigastric artery. Inferior epigastric artery. So the inferior epigastric artery is found somewhere here. Okay, good. So if there is a hernia, okay, and you want to know whether it is direct or indirect, and you go for scan, okay, you'll be able to visualize the inferior epigastric artery, okay. So if the hernia starts from here, it starts at the lateral to the inferior epigastric artery, we say it is what? Indirect. But if the hernia is at a site which is medial to the inferior epigastric artery, we say it is what? Direct. Okay. So we use the inferior epigastric artery to determine whether the hernia is direct or indirect. If the hernia is medial to the inferior epigastric artery, it is direct. If it is lateral, it is what? Indirect. If it is lateral, that means it passed through the deep ring. If it is medial, that means it didn't pass through the deep ring. So this is the end of our hernias.